Commitment 2016 special, presented by WMUR and the New Hampshire Union Leader, and in partnership with the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, the Granite State Debates.
It wouldn't be a good New Hampshire primary if it wasn't close and exciting for everyone.
I am honored to be your nominee for governor in this fall's election.
They may represent the next generation of New Hampshire leaders, but the contrasts are clear.
Making the successful New Hampshire Healthcare Protection Plan permanent will help everyone.
The issue at hand is doing it the New Hampshire way.
It's a race that has forged a test of political will.
There's a big test that has been in front of Chris Sununu that he has failed.
Colin wants to do anything he can to not talk about the issues, to not meet me on a debate stage.
And in 7 days, one of them will be elected governor, and tonight's debate will be a final chance for each to make their case.
Our campaign begins and ends with people. We've just been pounding the pavement.
I believe we need to keep our state moving forward, and I'm the candidate who's been part of that progress.
Tonight, the candidates for governor.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live WMUR Granite State Debate Series from the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College. I am Political Director Josh McKelvin, and tonight we will be discussing the top issues facing the state of New Hampshire with the candidates for governor, Democratic Executive Councilor Colin Van Ostern and Republican Executive Councilor Chris Sununu. But first, let's have a quick look at tonight's formats, the rules of the road. Questions will come from the moderator and our panelists. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. Rebuttals will be at the moderator's discretion, and each candidate will also have time for a closing statement. But before we start with that, let's get to know our panelists tonight. We have Dave Solomon. He's a reporter for the New Hampshire Union Leader. Adam Sexton is a WMUR political reporter, and Allie Morris is a reporter from the Concord Monitor. So with that, let's get started with an issue that a lot of people feel is the biggest threat facing the state of New Hampshire, our communities, and perhaps our next generation. According to our latest WMUR Granite State poll, 44% of adults in New Hampshire see drug abuse, the crisis of addiction, as the #1 issue facing the state. That's more than twice those who cited jobs in the economy as the top issue. The state medical examiner is predicting this problem to continue, the deaths to rise, as many as 500 this year. Just for a little perspective, we're talking about 114 people who were killed in car accidents on New Hampshire roads, 500 due to the drug addiction. Obviously, there's been a lot of progress, a lot of work that's been done on this. So let's accentuate the positive here. I'm going to start with you, Colin, Councilor Van Ostern. What do you see as the single most successful program that's been implemented so far, and what would you do to augment it?
Well, thanks for the question. It's the most urgent crisis that's facing our state. And I know the way that we'll overcome the opioid and addiction crisis is by attacking the problem, not the people with the problem. One of the things that's absolutely critical that we've done is expand Medicaid healthcare coverage. It now covers 50,000 people in our state. This wasn't a Democrat or Republican program. It's one that was the result of bipartisan compromise. It took a lot of work to get done. 7,000 people now have gotten recovery resources and addiction treatment services through the bipartisan expansion of Medicaid. It's something that Chris and I have significantly differed on. I've supported it. He's opposed it repeatedly. You know, the last time that we were here on this stage in this room, it was for a forum with the New Hampshire Police Association. And they ask about this too, because they know they can't arrest their way out of the problem. I'm proud that tomorrow they'll be endorsing me in this race because they see that there's one candidate who is committed to extending the bipartisan expansion of Medicaid, and that treatment is critical. It's not all we can do, but it's one of the tools that's critical for overcoming the drug crisis.
Thank you. And Councilor Sununu, what do you see as the single most effective measure that we've taken so far, and what would you do to fix it?
Well, again, when you have 1,000 people that have lost their lives in the past 2 years, we're on track for another record-breaking year. It's shattering. It's shattering. It is an emergency of frankly, drastic proportions, without a doubt. So we have to be aggressive in all areas. Number one, I believe we need aggressive prevention programs in our schools. I have a 5th and a 6th grader. My son was part of the DARE program. That program is drastically underfunded, and it hasn't had the resources to talk about things like heroin, opioids, fentanyl. And I've had that conversation with my wife, knowing that in the next couple of years, my kids will be offered drugs. That's a hard reality that we face as parents, but that's where we're going. We have to get to our kids before the drug dealers do. We have to get tough on the streets. We need more officers on the streets. We need to make sure that officers know that the elected officials have their backs every time. We need to keep Operation Granite Hammer fully funded, moving forward. And we have to start making sure that the drug dealers, and let's be honest, they're not drug dealers. They are dealing death at this point with these pills. We have to be tough on them. We have to be tough and start executing the penalties that that will put them away, and make sure that they're not pushing forward with our kids.
All right, thank you very much. Sticking with this topic, let's go to our panel now, and WMUR political reporter Adam Sexton.
Thanks, Josh. Gentlemen, the state allocated $3 million to the governor's commission on alcohol and drug abuse, but last month some lawmakers complained that only $1 million of those dollars had been spent so far. Everyone is clamoring for resources to fight this problem. By your estimation, what was the holdup with this? And as governor, what would you do to get money out more quickly in the future? And let's start with you, Councilor Sununu.
Well, look, we've had a lot of problems with getting money out of Concord, and often politics comes into play. And whether, with the variety of different programs that we have up there, I mean, I think the drug abuse crisis that we're facing is one good example where when we were offered a $12 million grant, we were given a $12 million grant to fight this. That's very important. And when the folks went up and knocked on the governor's office and said, now how are we going to spend that money? She didn't even know about it. Right? So this is where management comes into play. This is where staying on top of issues like this come into play to make sure that we're getting funds out, that we're being responsive, that we're managing this issue, because it does require real management.
Councilor Van Oosteren, why was the state unable to spend all of this money in the year?
Well, it's true that sometimes politics does get in the way. Even the successful expansion of Medicaid that we've seen took a number of tries before it got done. We had to call the legislature back into a special session. It failed twice before there was enough compromise to get it to move forward. I do know we're starting to make some progress. This past week, we approved grants for the Hope recovery centers in Franklin, which is coming online soon, and in Berlin, which just recently opened. I was up in Berlin this weekend. There's no question that we're picking up momentum, but the hill is still steeper ahead of us, and there's more that we need to do. And I'm committed as governor to addressing this problem with the urgency that it requires. I have been inspired by individuals themselves in recovery who are spending their time helping others understand what life without heroin can be. And I know that we need to do more prevention, treatment, and recovery, including cracking down on how our state is awash in prescription pills in the first place.
Let's move forward. Sticking with the panel. Next question is coming from Dave Solomon of the Union Leader, and this one's going to Councilor Van Oosteren.
Thank you. First to you, Councilor Van Oosteren. It is widely accepted that Child Protective Services in the state are in crisis. We have had 2 young girls die while their cases were under review by the Division for Children, Youth, and Families, Sadie Willott, Brielle Gage. We have the State Protective Service Agency being sued because children under their watch were sexually abused. An independent agency says we can't hire enough social workers, we can't keep the ones we have, the cases are piling up. What can you do as governor in your first weeks in office to ensure greater protection for our children against the danger of child abuse?
What we've seen is a tragedy. And the independent audit that you just referenced is one that we hired specifically to help come up with some solutions for how we can deal with this in the wake of some of those tragedies. I sat down about 2 weeks ago with state employees who work in child support and Child and Family Services, spent a couple hours visiting the Sununu Youth Center with no television cameras or reporters, just hearing individually from state employees about the realities that they face every day. I heard about caseloads that are far beyond anything that any one individual can handle. And the reality that individuals who are trained to be social workers can't be expected to be law enforcement as well. So what we need from our next governor is going to be an immediacy of additional staffing, and I think we also need to respect the fact that if we can't fill those roles right away, we may need to look at the appropriate pay scale. It's great that we have low unemployment in New Hampshire, but part of the reality is that we need to do more to strengthen our workforce, and that's an area where it's absolutely critical.
Thank you. Councilor Sununu.
What we've seen with the crisis at DCYF is real. There's been tragedy from it. There's no doubt that DCYF needs to be fully funded. We need staff. We need people on the ground, not just sitting in the offices dealing with paperwork and regulation and bureaucracy. We need to have the staff to be out in the field, engaging families one-on-one, engaging individuals one-on-one to find out the pushes and pulls, what their needs truly are. And when you see many of the DCYF workers with caseloads of 100, 150, maybe even 200, we're setting ourselves up for a recipe for disaster. I work very closely with the Sununu Center. I'm very proud of the Sununu Center. They provide quality programming for kids to get them on a better path, quality programming for the troubled youth to make sure they don't become dangerous adults in the future. So we have a lot of the great programs there, but it needs to be fully funded. It needs to be staffed. My plan looks at incentives. So if you go to the university system here in New Hampshire, we'll help pay down your high debt if you stay and work in one of these high-demand job areas such as social work or clinicians. These are programs that will incentivize a more vibrant workforce in areas like DCYF.
With respect to DCYF, to both of you, talking about the staffing shortage, you identified why it's such a problem. Councilor Sununu first, and what can be done about it to get people in place?
Again, it's really a funding issue. I mean, when you have all of these vacancies, right? When you have all of these vacancies, these caseworkers that should be out there engaging with individuals, with families, with children, and making sure that their needs are being met, it has to be fully funded. There's money in the budget, and if we grow our economy the right way, in an organic way, we don't just try to tax our way out of the problem, we can keep funds coming in, the staff positions filled, and people getting the needs that they need.
DCYF hasn't received a lot of funding, correct me if I'm wrong, an additional amount of funding in quite a while, hasn't asked for it. So if it's a matter of money, why haven't they asked for it? What would you do differently?
Well, what I'm focused on is the solutions that we can bring to bear to fix the problem. And I do think having additional funding for appropriate staffing is a big part of it, both in terms of number of roles and appropriate pay scale. I also think we need to make sure that we're doing more to bring and keep young people and young families and new businesses and startups here. The truth is that the workforce shortage there is not unique. We see it in mental health care. We see it in nursing. We see it in assisted living. We're a rapidly aging state, the second oldest in the country. And when our high school students graduate from high school in New Hampshire, they leave faster than they leave any state except New Jersey. So there's absolutely more we can do to strengthen our economy by bringing and keeping young people and young families.
All right, candidates, thank you very much. Let's go back to the panel now. Question on energy, specifically green energy. You both have voting records on the Executive Council speaking to renewable projects, and Allie Morris has the next question.
So, Councillor Sununu, first to you. You have voted against numerous renewable projects while you have been on the council. Do you support using any taxpayer dollars to subsidize wind or solar power if you become governor?
So let's be clear. I was an environmental engineer for 10 years. I spent my career cleaning up hazardous waste sites. I spent much of my career designing these renewable energy systems. And the vast majority of the renewable projects that have come before the Executive Council, I've approved. Everything from biomass to solar, wind, hydro. These can be good projects, and we need to make sure we have a diverse portfolio. There are many projects I have said no to. Because, again, unlike Colin, who's a rubber stamp for every project that comes before him, I see the value in using judgment, discernment, my knowledge base, and knowing what projects fit our needs. For example, when Manchester wanted to spend $4 million so they could save $26,000 a year, well, that's not a very good use of our money. I said no to that project, not to just get rid of the $4 million, to hopefully reinvest it in renewable projects that have a better return for us, a better benefit for people, so we can see rates drop, so we can see a better environmental and social economic benefit.
Councillor Van Oostern, recently the person in charge of New England's power grid warned that by 2019 there may not be enough power to meet the area's energy needs in the wintertime, and that we need more traditional backups to renewables or more natural gas. You've been an advocate for renewable energy, but since you can't always count on the weather, what would you do to keep the lights on in the state?
Well, additional investments in solar and renewable energy is absolutely critical. There's more that we can be doing, and the reason is because it has three goals. You tend to lower electricity costs by bringing more power onto the grid. This is ultimately about supply and demand. But you also create good local jobs that tend to be high paying, and you do it in a way that protects our environment here in New Hampshire, which is critical to our state's second biggest industry, our tourism industry. That's why I've been a strong advocate for solar and renewable energy projects. Now, in the 4 years that Chris and I have sat together on the Executive Council, he has voted against every single solar energy project in front of us. In Manchester and Durham and Portsmouth and Peterborough and Plymouth and Milton. The truth is that when you see the world through just the eyes of the fossil fuel industry or the biggest electric utilities, you see solar as a threat. But when you see it the way most New Hampshire consumers and businesses see it, you see it as an opportunity to create good jobs and lower electricity costs by bringing more supply onto the grid. And I think that's an important step for our state.
Councillor, with respect, the question was focused on backup plan should the renewables not be there to keep our grid going. Yeah. What do you think a good backup plan should be?
Well, let me give you an example as to why the world has been changing. I used to work at Stonyfield Yogurt. 10 years ago, Stonyfield had the biggest solar array in the state on the roof of the yogurt plant. It was a 47 kilowatt array. Today, the biggest is 20 times that in Peterborough. It's one that Chris opposed and I supported. By the way, it was a 143-0 vote in the Peterborough town meeting to get that done, and then a 4-1 vote on the Executive Council with bipartisan support. But right now, today, there are multiple projects being planned that are 50 times as big as that one. And we are seeing that solar and renewable energy projects are becoming financially feasible, technically feasible, and it's an investment we need to make.
And let's be clear, you know how much that Peterborough project dropped ratepayers? 0. The Manchester, 0. A lot of these projects aren't having net benefits to the ratepayers. We need to make sure that we're using a judgment and discernment and a knowledge base that I bring to make sure we're helping the individuals, we're helping the families, and we're truly reducing energy costs to the families of New Hampshire.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Let's keep it with the project, energy project a lot of people are talking about. Adam Sexton has the next question.
Thanks, Josh. Councilor Van Oosteren, you've said that the state needs to look seriously at burying the transmission lines of the Northern Pass project that is proposed, and if it is buried, you're more open-minded to the project itself. Would you be willing to compromise, though, on that if the lines are not entirely buried? And if not, do you see another way beyond renewables to bring cheap energy into the state?
Well, I'm not going to negotiate against myself. I do think that we need to bury more of the lines in order to protect our tourism industry here in New Hampshire. But I also recognize that there were 7 of us who ran for governor, 4 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 6 had at least some hesitations, concerns, or recommendations on how to approve the Northern Pass project. Only 1, Chris Sununu, said that they should be able to essentially do whatever they want, even though the site evaluation committee process is still ongoing. And I think that that's unfortunate. The discernment that he says he shows when it comes to solar and renewable energy projects just doesn't exist when it comes to something that's being funded by huge multi-billion-dollar corporations through our state. I think people of good faith can have honest disagreements about the Northern Pass project. And there are some who thought that we should move forward but make some changes. Others who said even if they bury the whole thing, we shouldn't do it then, and that's not what I support. But I do think that we need a governor who's going to stand up for the people. The reason Chris said he opposed those solar projects was, quote, because they penalize the electric utility companies. I'm worried about doing what's right for consumers and New Hampshire's economy.
Councilor, you were invoked there, but before that, you obviously support Northern Pass, and you said that it's a mistake to try and get them to bury the entire line. Are you concerned at all about affecting the state's natural beauty by not burying the line?
Well, look, I'm in the
how
heart.
will you answer Granite Staters who do not want that line in their backyard?
Yeah, I'm in the heart of the tourism industry. We put up the windmills that are 2 to 3 times as tall as some of the towers, and it doesn't affect the tourism industry. Most of the line goes through an existing power corridor that's already there. But let's understand, Colin, who says he's all for renewable, this is 1,100 megawatts of clean, renewable hydropower, one of the largest renewable energy projects in the Northeast. And we get to bring that line in at 0 construction costs to the state of New Hampshire and save the ratepayers $80 million a year. That's real savings to businesses, to individuals, to families, to the elderly or low income that are on fixed incomes, that don't have financial flexibility. And I've always said the project has to be done the New Hampshire way, talking to the individual towns. I think there's still a place to be explored in terms of bearing more of the line between Plymouth and Franklin possibly. So there are some tweaks to this design we can make, but when you say you want to bury the whole line, that adds $500 million of cost that would come directly to the people in New Hampshire. It's essentially canceling the project. Let me tell you, 2 years ago, my electric bill was $1.2 million just to make snow. So when we see companies like BAE, Foss, Ruger, these are great manufacturing companies in New Hampshire. They are leaving this state because we haven't had leadership stand up and actually make real progress in lowering rates for New Hampshire taxpayers. So we have to have leadership that moves the ball forward. Nothing has happened.
All right.
Look at all your bills. They've gone up for the past
Counselor.
10 years, up and up and up. We need leadership to start dropping those numbers.
Thank you, Councilor. And candidates, you may or may not know that a lot of the voting public right now looks at elected officials with a bit of a skeptical eye. So let's talk about public trust for a second. With respect to Northern Pass, Eversource has 24 employees, management employees, Councilor Sununu, that has donated to your campaign. Obviously, as individuals, they can donate to whoever they want to. But some might have questions on how you make the case that this project with the Sununu administration isn't already bought and paid for.
Oh, well, absolutely not. Look, there's no active contract of Northern Pass sitting before the Executive Council. There's no active projects here that we're moving forward on. I'm a supporter of Northern Pass because I know it's going to drop rates. And I'm a victim of our incredibly high rates. They're just not sustainable. They're really not. Think about this. As we have a more of an aged state, we're getting to be an older state. The average age of New Hampshire is now beyond Florida. That means more folks are on fixed incomes. We still have a lot of folks on the lower income scale. Again, we need to provide ways to give financial flexibility to those individuals so they can stay in their homes, they can stay in the state. And whether it's lowering fuel costs, lowering healthcare costs, lowering energy costs, these are all things we need to do to help the individuals. See, policy in Concord is more than just words on a piece of paper. It's how it affects families. It's how it affects individuals. And again, we need a governor who's a stakeholder in these issues to make sure whatever we do in Concord is for the best interest of the people in New Hampshire.
And in the interest of fairness, your campaign, Councilor Van Oosteren, has received thousands of dollars from faculty and staff members, administrators from Dartmouth. Dartmouth-Hitchcock obviously is engaged in a contract with the state worth $36 million. You two have gone back and forth on this one quite a bit. But let's start with the public trust part of this thing. How can you make the case, or how do you convince voters that the dollars and donations to your campaign don't influence where you stand on this?
Well, I think voters should judge us based on the votes that we make and the positions that we take and who we stand up for. I'm always going to stand up for the people of New Hampshire. The problem is not just the 24 out-of-state energy executives who gave money to Chris's campaign for governor while he's promoting a project that every other candidate for governor has at least some hesitations about. The problem is that when he votes over and over and over against solar energy projects and says that he doesn't want to penalize the electric utility companies, I think we need a governor who's going to put the people of New Hampshire first, who's going to stand up for the people of New Hampshire. The reason I advocate for solar and renewable energy projects is partly because it brings down electricity costs, but also because it helps create great local jobs, high-paying local jobs. I toured that Peterborough solar array recently, and I met folks now who are supporting dozens of jobs here in New Hampshire, building projects exactly like that one. That's how we take the next step forward for our state, but it requires having a governor who's going to stand up for people.
Let's be clear. You just asked a question about Colin taking over $40,000 from Dartmouth-Hitchcock, and he completely ignored the question. And that's an issue where there is an active contract before us where I've stood up and said, we need to challenge, we need better management, we need to rebid the contract. Colin did as well until those contributions came in, and then we've heard nothing from him since. Complete mismanagement on the part of Governor Hassan, of Colin Van Osteren. The red flags are all over the place. And again, Colin knows the red flags are there. He knows the lack of action he's taken. He knows the mismanagement, and that's why he completely avoided answering the question.
30 seconds.
I think, Josh, the question actually was about how folks can judge the decisions we make. And so I gave examples of where we each have cast different decisions on a vote and allowed voters to choose whether or not that's in the best interest of the people of New Hampshire. The reason that I like to think both Chris and I voted for that contract, because in fact it was just a month ago that Chris supported the same contract that I did, is because we have a serious crisis in mental health care in New Hampshire. Today there are 34 professionals, doctors and nurses on staff. There were 24 earlier this summer. There was a 10-bed acute psychiatric unit that was vacant, a wing that we couldn't open because we didn't have enough staff there. Now, I think that's why both of us supported this contract a month ago, and I don't think having an election a week away should change your position on it.
Go ahead. You have 30 seconds. He invoked you on.
Well, again, Colin is absolutely right. We have a mental health crisis. Again, the red flags came up. The governor and her administration made it clear they weren't going to rebid it, even though there are other companies that could have bid on this. We moved forward on the contract. The next day, Dartmouth-Hitchcock announced 450 layoffs. Days later, senior people are quitting on us. So the red flags are there. This thing needs to be rebid. It needs to be held accountable. You can talk about wanting accountability, but management is about taking real action. Colin has sat on his hands. He's done absolutely nothing. And when you're talking about some of the most sensitive citizens in our state, that's where we need to stand up. The major difference between the two of us with this question is I answered the question head on. I'll be transparent. I'll give you a straight story every single time. Colin will shuck and jive and dodge the question any which way he can.
Let's move forward. We touched on mental health issues facing the state. Next question coming from our panel and Dave Solomon, the union leader.
All right, it's a mental health related question that I would invite both of you to provide a direct answer to. First, Councillor Sununu, will you include in your first capital budget the funds needed to build a secure unit at the state psychiatric hospital so we don't have to keep sending violent but non-criminal mental health patients to the state prison?
Absolutely. We need to, again, provide the proper funding in terms of making sure that those with mental illness, those in our psychiatric wards, and those within the prison system itself are getting their needs met. When you look at what's going on within our prison system, we have a lot of other issues there. We have a severe mental health crisis, to be sure. MHM, I believe, is the company currently in place providing those services. But we also have staffing needs within the prison system. When right now, we force mandatory overtime on many of the guards because we can't fill those positions. Morale is low. The turnover rate is incredibly high. So when you look at that entire system, and I think that's what management is all about, taking a global look at the entire system, whether you're talking about mental health, the psychiatric wards, the individual units, not just in Loudoun, but some of the other prisons, the local prisons as well, the local jails we have in our counties. We have to have a governor that looks at this entire package and understands where the funding needs are and prioritize. Leadership is about making sure our priorities are set, funding them appropriately, and moving forward.
So Councilor Sununu says he will support a secure unit at the state psychiatric hospital. How about you, Councilor?
I would support capital dollars, but to be honest, I don't think that will do it alone. What we saw at the New Hampshire hospital was that we built a 10-bed acute psychiatric unit, and then it sat vacant for 6 months because we didn't have the workforce to staff it. And so the reality is this isn't just about a capital expenditure. We also need to make sure that we have the workforce and the funding for treatment. One of the reasons I've strongly supported the bipartisan expansion of Medicaid healthcare coverage in New Hampshire is because it includes funding for behavioral and mental health care coverage for substance use disorder. 50,000 of our fellow citizens now have coverage, and we did it without raising state taxes. We brought $608 million of our own taxes that we had sent to Washington and brought them back to work here in New Hampshire. That's the sort of policy that we need to make sure that it's not just how many beds are available, but that we have the resources to provide that treatment. This is something that Chris and I repeatedly have disagreed on. He opposed the bipartisan expansion of healthcare coverage repeatedly, and he said he wants to repeal it in this campaign. It's a big difference, and regardless of what beds we build, if we don't have the coverage for folks, they'll sit empty.
Take 30 seconds,
Yeah,
Councilor.
just to be clear, Colin keeps going back to Medicaid expansion. I've always said we should look at going forward with Medicaid expansion over the next 2 years. But what Colin wants to do is make it permanent. And anytime you make a large government program, especially out of Washington, D.C., permanent, you lose all control in terms of cost, in terms of programming. Our needs are very different than other states. So I want to move forward with Medicaid expansion because there are some very good programs in there, such as substance abuse treatment, and other parts. But again, we need to design a system that meets our needs. We need to design a system that is in New Hampshire's best interest, not in the interests of Washington, D.C.
And quickly, Councilor Van Oosteren, why is that a flawed argument in your opinion?
Well, I'm glad to hear now that he wants to go forward with it
Been
a week
saying it the
before the
entire
election.
election.
But we've sat together on the Executive Council for the last 4 years. When we called the legislature into a special session, Chris was the only counselor 4-1 to oppose that. The next spring, when we applied for the federal waiver to do a uniquely New Hampshire solution, that, by the way, was a great idea that Republicans and Democrats came together to do so that most folks get private health insurance through the Medicaid expansion, he opposed that. Then he opposed the contract. Then in his primary campaign, he said he did everything in his power to prevent it from coming forward. And he still says he wants to repeal it on his website today.
The contract I opposed was a $292 million contract we received a mere hour or two before the vote. And all I said was, can we read it first? One of the largest contracts in the state history? I want to read it. As governor, I'm never going to sign a bill or move forward on a contract that I don't read. Colin's a rubber stamp. He doesn't seem to care about reading the contracts. It was all understood that we didn't have time to read. I asked for a mere couple of days. But the governor said no, and Colin, as usual, went right along with it.
Well, let's try to move on. Get you on record on a couple of different issues in sort of a lightning round. I don't know if it's a lightning round mood at this moment, but we'll start with kind of a heavy topic, but it's an important one. And we'll start with you, Councilor Sununu. Are you in favor of repealing, expanding, or leaving the death penalty as it is here in New Hampshire?
I'm for the death penalty. I think the law that we have on the books is the right law.
No expansion?
I believe as a matter of faith and conscience that we should use a sentence of life without parole instead of the death penalty, but I would do nothing as governor that would change that retroactively. We have somebody on who's been sentenced to die today. He was tried by a jury of his peers. He had access to our court system in a fair way, and as governor, I would not commute that sentence.
All right, next question. Transgendered bathrooms in schools. Obviously been in the news a lot lately. Should a transgendered student, Councilor Van Oosteren, be allowed to use the bathroom that they most identify their gender with?
I don't think we should have bathroom police in New Hampshire.
Public schools, I'm asking you.
Well, in our schools either. I think that we have led the nation when it comes to treating every citizen with dignity and equality and respect, and that's what we should continue to do.
Same question for you, Councilor Van Oosteren.
Yeah, it's a local issue. If the local communities and local districts want to make that decision for themselves, then I support that.
Next question. Ambition in future. Would you seek office beyond the governor's office if you win, Councilor? I mean, after your term is up, obviously, Councilor Sununu.
I've always said I have no interest in ever running for any other office again. I will not run for Congress. I will not run for Senate. I have no interest in it. I have a family and I have a business. And that's why I'm running for governor, because our fundamentals have changed in the state. I want to bring back the New Hampshire way. That's my only focus.
Is your political ceiling with the governor's office?
Well, it is the highest office in New Hampshire, that's for sure, and I'm certainly not running for any national office. The reality is that I'm running for a term of 730 days. And I will wake up every single one of those days focused on helping the people of New Hampshire and focused on doing that only through one office, and that office is Governor of New Hampshire.
Do you believe that the state should have an Inspector General's office?
I think the Executive Council does a good job of making sure that we manage our state agencies, and I don't know that another layer of bureaucracy is necessarily going to achieve that goal.
Same question for you,
I would
Councilor
agree.
Sununu.
I think we have a good checks and balance system in place, and again, we need to make sure that it's accountable, it's true, and they do their job.
Lastly, expanded gambling. Been over this quite a bit over the years, but a little different twist. If a bill arrived on your desk legalizing sports betting here in New Hampshire, Councilor Sununu, would you sign it?
Sports betting. Well, I haven't really thought of that beyond the traditional casinos that we've been talking about. I'm a free market guy. So if casinos want to come in, I've always said that if we do it right, we make sure it's an open process. We create the regulatory infrastructure in place. That's one area where I'm a big believer getting government out of people's way, but that's one area where we probably need to make sure we have the regulatory structure in place. I'm open to everything.
New Hampshire have room for a sports book?
I haven't looked at it closely either. I'll tell you, my concerns about casino gambling in New Hampshire are not moral ones. I play poker with friends a couple times a year. But I have concerns that the economics just don't work for New Hampshire. They're building big resorts just over the southern border. And I don't know that the dollars and cents really add up.
All right, thank you very much. That's going to bring an end to our quasi-lightning round. Appreciate that. Let's go back to our panel. Next question coming from, someone raised their hand. Dave Solomon's got it. There you go.
Dollars and cents you were talking about, and so we're going to segue into taxes. And you're both against any new broad-based taxes in the state, and New Hampshire has done well over the years without them, but it has put an incredible burden on the property owners of the state with ever-increasing property taxes, driving older people from their homes and making it very difficult for younger people to buy them. Do you see any form of new revenue that you would like to see brought into the state to provide property tax relief? And if not new revenue, how do you propose to bring about property tax relief for the property owners of the state, starting with Councilor Sununu?
Thank you. The best way to raise revenue in the state is to grow business organically. Most of our revenue right now comes from business taxes. And I'm a believer when you actually lower business taxes, you break down regulation, you lower energy costs, you lower healthcare costs. These are all the things that business owners like myself have to look at every single day to make the best decisions. We haven't attracted a new business in this state in years. Years. I think it was maybe in 2010, Albany was the last real major business we brought in. And that's because we haven't had real business leadership in the corner office understanding how to drive business. My goal is to go out and visit 100 businesses out of state in the first 100 days. I'll go out, I'll meet them one-on-one. I'll talk about the issues important to them because I understand that. Because I'm dealing with it every day. I have over 800 employees. I know what's important to business. By driving more business into the state, we can create organically a lot more money and revenue for our programs. And you're absolutely right. We have put a downshifting of cost onto the local cities and towns. We need to pull that back. The state needs to live up to its obligation. And maybe we're not going back to the 30 or 35% of the municipal costs that the state paid, but we start at 5, 10, 15% to provide more financial flexibility to the individual towns and take the burden off property taxes.
Councilor Van Oster.
Well, one way we can provide property tax relief is by funding full-day public kindergarten in every community in the state. Right now, half of our communities do that on their own dime, and that's another way that we've been downshifting costs. And I think that's an important thing to do, both for our kids, for potentially local property tax relief, but also for parents who want to work. You know, I've seen how we can grow our economy in the private sector. I managed a $100 million P&L at Stonyfield Yogurt and managed a growing business there. Helped start a nonprofit workforce development college at Southern New Hampshire University. I know that bringing down college costs, strengthening our workforce, getting passenger rail from Boston up to Nashua, the airport, and the mill yard in Manchester, investing in clean and renewable energy projects, and stopping some of the government regulation and red tape that's holding that back. Those are the things that'll bring and keep more young people, young families, new businesses, startups, and grow our economy so we can make the investments we need.
All right, let's keep it with economic development and a project where you differ in opinion on. And next question comes from Adam Sexton.
Councilor Van Osten, you mentioned commuter rail there, and I think some people in the room are probably old enough to remember when New Hampshire did have a commuter rail connection to Boston, which it lost in the 1980s when federal subsidies were cut. You said reviving that line through Nashua and Manchester would be a top priority of your potential administration. But what would you do if the state invests the millions of dollars necessary to revive that line, and then once again the federal government pulls the rug out from underneath us and takes away the subsidies that make that rail line possible?
Well, I've put forward a financing plan that'll help bring commuter rail from Boston to Nashua to the airport to the mill yard. Independent study shows it'll help create 5,600 new jobs in New Hampshire, help develop nearly 2 million square feet of commercial real estate, and it'll cost a total of about $3 to $4 million a year. The federal support that we'll get is really for capital costs, not operating costs. And the operating costs are going to be paid for by a combination of ticket prices, tax increment finance districts in the cities that are affected, and $3 to $4 million a year in state funds. Now, that's about the same investment that we made in increasing the R&D tax credit. And the idea is the same. Help New Hampshire businesses grow. The fact is there are great businesses throughout our state that depend on a more successful Manchester airport that will be helped by the rail line. And even if you never step foot on a train, less traffic on I-93 and Route 3 is going to be good for all of us.
Are you claiming that the federal government will not need to subsidize at all the rail line after it's constructed?
The capital cost, not the operating cost. That's right.
But even if they do kick in for maintenance up and operation, it sounds like the state's going to need to pay about $11 million a year for rail.
$3 to $4 million, actually.
That's
Well,
absolutely
it's $10 to $12 million a year was the estimate from the New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority. So
it is, but that, Adam, just to be clear, that's the cost estimate. That doesn't include revenue for things like ticket sales or parking. So the net operating cost is about $1 million a year.
the state would still be subsidizing to the tune of about $10 per rider. Is
Sure.
is that appropriate?
I think investments that help bring 5,600 new jobs to the area are critical. I think about an entrepreneur I know who last year he got some outside investment in a growing business in Manchester. It's a digital software company. And his job was to grow from 10 to 15 employees, but it came with the self-imposed contingency: find 4 software engineers within 90 days or move your company to Boston. He tells me if we had rail, they would have been able to move that much quicker. The fact that investors are even saying you might need to move to Boston because of the workforce there should be an alarm bell. We need to make investments in moving our economy forward.
Councillor Sununu, you've opposed rail projects routinely, or the thought of the rail project. Is that not somewhat short-sighted, though, given the environmental and transportation concerns? That why shouldn't we provide that extra option to commuters?
Well, let's understand, leadership is about priorities. When you have 153 red-listed bridges in this state, 2,000 miles of poorly to very poorly paved roads. We haven't finished I-93. The Sarah Long Bridge just broke a couple months ago. To spend $350 million on a boondoggle project as rail, we could fix every red-listed bridge for that amount of money. And this idea that it's going to drive jobs in is an absolute myth. Look at the Downeaster. One of the most successful trains in the country is the Downeaster. Runs right by my house in Newfields. And when we take it down into Boston, the state of Maine is paying 50% of that subsidy. They pay over $10 million a year for that train. And has it driven any? The initial projections was it was going to drive jobs into southeast New Hampshire. It was going to drive jobs into Maine. There's not a single person getting off that train to go to work in the morning. You know how I know? Because the first train doesn't even arrive till 10:30. So Colin can talk about all these jobs that are going to be created, but it's an absolute myth. Ways to look forward. If we want to look at the train, let's look down the line. Let's be smart. Maybe we create intermodal transportation systems where the track may go 20, 25 years down the road. But right now we have real needs in our state. Colin wants to pander to the train fanatics. I want to make sure that the people of the state are driving on safe roads, viable roads that will propel our economy forward.
We're out of time. Take 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. The train fanatics are people like the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, the Nashua Chamber of Commerce, business leaders who want to see their businesses grow. Those are important investments that we need to make. As important as it has been that we accelerate I-93 expansion, which I have fought hard to do. Important that we invest in improving the Pettingill Road area around the Manchester Airport, because we've seen great companies like Pratt Whitney and EFI have plans to locate jobs there. Those are the sort of investments we need to make to move our state economy forward.
So why aren't there new jobs in Dover or Exeter or
Dover
Durham?
actually
Where
is
are
the
they?
fastest growing city in New Hampshire.
Yes, from the train? Why isn't there a single job coming off that train in the morning,
Counselor.
Colin, if it's going to be so successful?
We're going to move forward. Go ahead and answer and we'll go.
I'd love to take more time to talk about how the promise of commuter rail for New Hampshire. The fact is that the Seacoast is one of the fastest growing parts of our state. And the only place in our country that has 500,000 people that isn't serviced by some level of rail is the Nashua-Manchester corridor. We are not talking about building the Hyperloop. We're talking about taking an existing commuter rail line and extending it 33 miles. If you can't make an investment like that for our state's future, then you're just not going to do anything.
We're going to move forward.
$350 million.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Obviously, New Hampshire's number one in a lot of categories in the nation, including one we'd rather not be number one in. Next question comes to higher education and the cost of it from Allie Morris.
So New Hampshire, as Josh mentioned, is now number one in 2 categories, neither of which is very positive. 76% of 2015 New Hampshire grads left school with loans, the most in the nation. And the average student debt for those graduates was more than $36,000, 8% more than the year before. How can New Hampshire possibly attract and keep young people with those numbers, and what would you do to lower college debt? First to you, Councillor Van Oostern.
Well, we have to lower those numbers. We cannot thrive as an economy if we have the highest level of in-state tuition and the highest level of student debt. And this is something I've worked on professionally in the private sector. I left a great job at Stonyfield Yogurt to help launch a nonprofit college at Southern New Hampshire University called College for America. When I started there 3 years ago, there were about a dozen employees, no paying students, and a promising pilot project. This past year, by partnering with over 100 employers and helping working adults, we enrolled 4,600 new students. 71% are the first in their family to go to college. Most are getting a degree without debt. And the lessons I take with me are that we need to focus on bringing costs down. That means when we increase funding for a university system, it has to come with accountability goals for the first time of reducing student debt and reducing student costs, but also partnering better with the private sector and focusing on pathways. Not every student lives in a dorm getting a 4-year degree. We need to focus on our trade programs, our apprenticeships, our community colleges, and our career technical education in our high school. That brings down out-of-pocket costs a lot when you can connect them.
Councillor Sununu, same question. How do we get New Hampshire off that dubious list?
Well, my plan looks at real programs to, again, reduce the debt that our current student graduates have, as well as reducing the actual amount that we pay going into our university system. For example, if you go to the university system under my plan and you stay and work in one of our high-demand job areas, we'll help pay down your debt. Whether it's teaching, nurses, clinicians, social work. These are areas where we can make real progress. Please remember, just 4 years ago, $278.03. That's the number my wife and I will always remember. We just paid down our college debt just 4 mere years ago, $278.03 every single month we had to pay for 15 years. I understand firsthand what it's like to carry that amount of debt. I don't mind putting more money into the university system, but under my plan, the first $5 million we put in will reduce costs for 5,000 students by $1,000. And unlike the governor we have, who's only attended one meeting of the Board of Trustees in 4 years, one meeting, I will go to those meetings, I'll be an active participant, and I will help them manage. It's about helping manage costs, not coming down like a sledgehammer on them, but again, getting a line item budget from the university. How are they spending their dollars? Are we being efficient with what we're doing? That's management. That's the type of experience we need in the corner office.
All right, let's keep it with education, and a question is coming from WMUR Facebook user Matt Pappas. He says, several years ago, the legislature removed school building aid from the state budget, leaving many struggling communities to pay the full cost of renovating and construction at old, decrepit, potentially unsafe schools is how he characterizes it. What will you do to help our communities to provide assistance when it comes to renovating and making our school buildings safe? And we'll start with you, Councillor Van Oostern.
Well, school building aid, as I think Councillor Sununu mentioned earlier in the evening, there's a strong case to be made for bringing that back, but to be honest, we probably can't afford to do it at the levels that we were. Sometimes the state would pay 50 or 60% of the costs of local school building. And I think we need to make sure that we prioritize our education dollars on what will have the biggest impact. I think that school building aid should be one of the things that's on the table, but we also need to make sure that we bring the funding for full-day public kindergarten to every single community in the state of New Hampshire, that we do more to help our local school districts invest in project-based learning, which allows them to replace half the standardized tests that students take, and instead use more project-based learning, which will help the students get job skills that they can apply and learn how to use their education in the real world. I think we need to invest in programs like Running Start and STEAM Ahead that allow high school students to start to earn college credit so they can bring down the cost of higher education. There's no better investment as a state than investing in our kids.
All right, thank you, Councillor. So, Councillor Sununu, school building aid to a high level, kind of an antiquated notion, do you agree?
Not antiquated at all. We absolutely have to restore school building aid funding. I have a 5th and a 6th grader. I'm in my kids' classrooms. And when you go into a classroom and we're in let's call it a negative atmosphere where the windows are painted shut, where the hallways are dimly lit, that's not a viable education environment for anybody. So to be able to put dollars forward, whether they're straight grants or matching funds for some of the local communities, especially up north. People have to remember we're a small state, but we're very geographically diverse. What's happening down the seacoast is very different than Manchester or up in the North Country or the White Mountains or even in the western part of the state. And there's real needs out there in terms of school building aid, making sure that they have viable facilities. I visited a charter school very recently. I'm a very big proponent of school choice, a very big proponent of charter schools, and making sure that any family, no matter where they want their kids to go to school, the parents have the final say in providing the best quality education. But charter schools are part of the public school system that, again, have a lot of trouble finding quality facilities sometimes. We have to make sure that we're reaching out to all the different aspects of our education system and making sure they're fully funded. And
quickly, before we get back to our panel, I was supposed to ask this during the lightning round question, but I think it's important to get on record. Common Core. It's a hot issue. A lot of people are talking about it. Do you repeal it, keep it? And we'll start with you, Councilor Sununu.
Common Core has to be scrapped. Well-intended idea, but again, another big Washington program that was not designed with our interest. Again, I have a 5th and a 6th grader. My son came home over 20 straight days telling me how he practiced for the Smarter Balance test. There's nothing educational about practicing about a test. And when I'm in the classrooms talking to the teachers, they're frustrated too. They don't have the time for individualized education. They don't have the time to push and challenge kids that need to be challenged or that can give other kids a little extra help.
I should ask this during the lightning round. I get it. Same question for you, Common Core.
Yeah, and as I said, I think we should be very aggressive about replacing high-stakes standardized testing with localized project-based learning. There are a handful of school districts around New Hampshire that have done a pilot program in this area called PACE. We're actually the first state in the country to be able to break out of some of the rigid requirements around a yearly standardized testing. But right now we have a cap holding back the number of school districts that can do that. I think we should look at lifting that and making sure that education and curriculum are built at the local level.
Thank you, candidates. Back to our panel. Next question coming from Allie Morris.
Councilor Van Ostern, you voiced strong support for building rail, which would cost millions of dollars a year in taxpayer costs for operating and maintaining the train. You've called for increasing school funding for full-day kindergarten with an estimated price tag of $13 million. You want to make expanded Medicaid permanent and increase funding to prevent addiction. How do you pay for all those priorities?
Well, I'll give you a few specific examples, and this is where it helps to have managed a P&L in the private sector, looking for ways to cut inefficient spending and cut red tape and reduce costs. Right now, as a state, we spend $15 million a year on postage and written correspondence. We don't have a requirement that checks for direct deposit go directly to a bank, and often we send them in the mail instead. We have a paper-based contracting process that holds back small businesses that want to do business with the state, but it's also far more expensive than a company like Stonyfield or a great employer like Southern New Hampshire University would use. I've also used my job as an executive counselor to identify ways that we can cut costs. There's a bridge being built in Keene today for less than $2 million. The original project proposal was over $4 million, but I brought the head of the state transportation department to hear from local voices, and a local engineer came and said, you know, we used a different model on the other side of town for a city bridge. Why don't you look at that? He was right. We reduced the cost. That's the kind of focus on cutting costs, cutting inefficient spending, reducing red tape that's needed, and I'll always oppose a sales tax and an income tax.
So would you raise any taxes or fees if elected governor?
So I've suggested that for full-day kindergarten, I think a worthwhile trade-off is seeing cigarette taxes be a dime a pack higher than they are right now. It would raise roughly the same amount of money, and we'd still see lower costs on cigarettes than every other state in New England.
That's it.
Well, that's the only one that I've proposed.
Okay. Councilor Sununu, your economic plan calls for any new rules and regulations to be held against a, quote, rigorous economic impact analysis conducted by business leaders in New Hampshire. Does that plan create a conflict of interest between citizens' health and well-being and business profits?
Oh, absolutely not. What I've proposed is that all the numerous rules that we have in this state that bear down on the businesses in this state, what we have to do is get the stakeholders at the table and find out which ones work, which ones don't, have them work with the regulatory authorities that we currently have, and find out where we can be more efficient. The fact of the matter is New Hampshire is a state fraught with red tape, making it very difficult to do business. That's what management is. And I have to take this moment. We've heard about Colin's experience at the yogurt company. He was essentially a marketing guy at the yogurt company for 3 years. What Colin never wants to talk about is the first 10 years of his 15-year career where he was a paid political operative. Management is about having business leadership experience. I've laid awake at night making sure we're going to make payroll, not just next month, but next year. I've laid awake at night stressing about how to make sure that my employees have the best quality health care. These are management decisions that I have taken on year after year after year, understanding how what we do affects people's lives. A paid political operative is no background for someone trying to manage budgets and control costs.
Obviously, you have an opportunity to rebut.
Well, thanks. You know, Governor Lynch would say that you need to be able to keep an eye on the bottom line and also look out for people. I think that's a good way to judge both of our experiences. I kept an eye on the bottom line at Stonyfield Yogurt, growing a $100 million business. And I've also left to help build a nonprofit college where today thousands of students are getting a degree without debt, looking out for people. Compare that to Chris's background. His only job in the last decade has been for the Sununu family. He worked at Sununu Enterprises, and when his family bought a ski mountain for him to manage, we've seen that he hasn't been able to keep an eye on the bottom line or look out for people. He cut jobs. They've lost half their skiers since he took over. They've fallen completely off the rankings. And what's worse, he held employees back from getting health care, and he opposes a state minimum wage.
Thank you, Councilor. We're almost out of time,
Well,
so
if
you've got to
he's
make it really very
If
quick.
he's going to attack look, Waterville Valley's success is undeniable. We're the only resort on the entire East Coast expanding millions of dollars of investment to grow our business. We've never gotten rid of anybody because of health care costs. Again, Colin will do anything to avoid the fact that when he was running campaigns, I was cleaning up hazardous waste sites. When he was with the Democrat Party, I was developing a resort for the families with disabilities. 10 years of a political operative is not the management we need in the corner office.
Back to the panelists. Question from Adam Sexton.
Gentlemen, how would you have handled this year's perfluorooctanoic acid, or PFOA, crisis in Merrimack and other communities differently from the way that Governor Hassan handled it? Let's start with Councilor Van Oosteren.
Well, the first thing that I did as an executive counselor is I attended the first community meeting that we had in Litchfield. And I was proud that the individual that we had from our State Department of Environmental Services is a Litchfield resident. So this is something that he didn't look at from a policy perspective. He lived and breathed it himself. I then asked our state agencies to consider lowering the threshold for who would get bottled water, who would get blood tests. That's exactly what they did. I think we always need to err on the side of caution. What I think we need to do now is make sure that we're holding the companies who may be responsible fully accountable and making sure that we're tracking the costs, but also making sure they don't just see this as a cost of doing business. We saw on the MTBE settlement when there was a settlement from Exxon for hundreds of millions of dollars that they had to pay because they had been polluting our groundwater. When you hold big corporations accountable for some of their pollution, not just as a small slap on the wrist or a fine, it stops others from doing it in the future.
Councilor Sununu.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Councilor Sununu, St. Gobain Performance Plastics was responsible for much of this contamination of the wells. They're paying to bring public water sources to those people. Shouldn't they be paying the water bills too?
I was an environmental engineer. My specialty was cleaning up chlorinated solvents in soil and groundwater. I dealt with these projects for over a decade. We have to have experience in the corner office that knows exactly how to deal with it. And yes, those that are responsible must be held accountable. But please understand, this isn't just about Litchfield. We have issues in Rye, in Kingston, in Salem. We have groundwater issues that have to be addressed. One of the most interesting aspects of public trust is every time we turn on the faucet, right? I mean, our kids are drinking that water, and we assume every time we turn it on, that water is coming out clean and healthy. Now, we've seen when leadership doesn't do their job, when leadership doesn't have the experience and the know-how to how to address these issues out in the Midwest and Detroit, what can happen? It can lead to real serious issues with our children. And again, we have to make sure that those in the corner office have real experience in these issues, that are going to put those that are need to be held accountable, and know how to address these issues and not overlook them.
Gobain pay the bill.
Absolutely.
All right, we are now down to our final question. We've touched on it already. We're talking about experience here. You both are executive counselors. You both talk about your background in business. How have both helped qualify you to lead this state? And the first response comes from you, Councilor Van Oosteren.
Well, to me, this job comes down to always looking out for people. A big difference between Chris and I on the executive council was the vote to support Planned Parenthood funding, which he voted to successfully cut off. For 10 months of the last year, we saw the impact on people. Now, I was raised by a single mom. I know what it's like to not always have health insurance growing up. And while that can seem like a political concept to Chris Sununu, I know how much it affects somebody if we saw, as we did in Manchester, wait lists go from 3 weeks to 5 weeks, or have the number of healthcare practitioners on shift go from 3 to 2. So I've seen issues like that in my work on the Executive Council. I've also seen at Stonyfield and Southern New Hampshire University concretely how we can bring and keep more young people and young families here, new businesses and startups, strengthen our economy and find inefficiencies and find ways to cut red tape to move our state forward. For me, it always comes to doing what's right for people, and that's the lesson that I'll take with me into the corner office.
Same question for you, Councilor Sununu.
I believe the question's about our business backgrounds. And once again, Colin doesn't want to talk about it because he doesn't really have a business background. Again, we need a stakeholder. I manage budgets. I manage people. I manage employees. I manage costs. These are the things that we need in the corner office to understand how these things affect people's lives. Again, it's not about words on a piece of paper. It's about how it affects people's lives. Now, my experience is well documented. My entire life is an open book. I give you straight answers every time. Colin will avoid his background any chance he gets because he's a paid political operative. And look at the ads we're seeing out there right now, right? Look at what we see his campaign doing. When he disagrees with something, he's put an ad out attacking my family. What kind of person puts an ad out with a picture of my mom in an attack ad? Is that the attitude, the philosophy, the culture we want in the governor's office? Is that the pinnacle of leadership, the model that we need to set for not just state government, but for the rest of the people in this state? I say absolutely not. I bring optimism and energy, positivity, all backed by real experience in managing
Councilor,
business.
we're just about out of time, but take 30 seconds if you'd like.
Yeah, well, it's no secret that Chris comes from a political family and he's been around politics his entire life. It's also no secret that the only job he's had in the last decade is working for the Sununu family. But what I'm more concerned about is the results of that. The fact that we've seen jobs cut at Waterville. The fact that he held employees back from getting health care coverage and that he took those same lessons to his work as an executive counselor, and I worry about what it would do for our state. Opposing Medicaid expansion, opposing Planned Parenthood funding, opposing even having a state minimum wage.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
not
we
what
have just
absolutely
about time. Take 30 seconds before
Yeah,
closing.
look,
statement.
it's absolutely true. We've created jobs at Waterville. We've created a weddings group. We've created restaurants.
For the record, there are 62 fewer jobs than the day Chris Sununu took over at
Again,
Waterville Valley.
this is a great example of Colin not having any business experience and background. He's taking a single data point that he doesn't understand and painting a broad political brush.
Gentlemen, we
I'd like
are
to-
out of time.
We've had
I wish we
tremendous
could,
success at Waterville
I wish
Valley.
I didn't have a clock, but we got to do it. If you want to give your closing
He said
statement,
a
we got to
single
do it
data
right now.
point. So, well, okay.
So,
Closing
and
statement.
as luck would have it, who drew to go first? Well, unfortunately, you get the last word. So, Councilor Sununu, closing statement, please.
Closing statement. Great. Well, thank you guys so much. And thank you for joining us today and for those who are watching. Look, New Hampshire's a great state. But we can and we must do better for our people, our communities, for the businesses that power our economy. I've taken the last year and traveled the state. I've listened to the voters. And it's clear we need to bring my experience as an environmental engineer, my experience as a business leader to make sure we're providing the best possible solutions for the people of New Hampshire. I'm very passionate about education. I talk about it a lot. My wife was a special ed teacher. I have a 5th and a 6th grader. I'm in their classrooms. We need to make sure we restore local control so parents can make the best decisions for their kids. And we have an out-of-control heroin crisis that has to be dealt with. I believe in strong prevention programs in our schools, accountability in treatment, and we have to start removing the roadblocks to recovery to get those coming through recovery onto a better path. The choice in this campaign is incredibly clear. We can keep going down the path of big Washington programs, big Washington solutions that don't have our interests in mind.
We got to give your opponent a chance. Take 60 seconds, Councilor Van Oster.
Well, thank you for watching tonight. A week from now, you'll have the opportunity to vote. And I ask for your vote, and I promise that if I earn it, I will always put people over politics. You know, we've heard a lot of talk about a lot of issues, but this race isn't about Chris, and it's not about me. It's about you. It's about the people of New Hampshire and whether they'll have a governor who sets aside politics to fight for them. For me, the issue isn't Planned Parenthood funding. It's the young woman who emailed me the day after that vote asking why 3 men took away funding for her annual exam at the Planned Parenthood Health Center. It's not about solar energy. It's about the young entrepreneur who graduated from UNH and is helping build a solar array on the roof of the Portsmouth High School that I supported and Chris opposed. It's not about whether or not we expand Medicaid. It's about a young woman I met recently who is in addiction treatment recovery today because of that bipartisan plan. If you elect me as governor, I'll stand up for the people of New Hampshire every day.
Candidates, thank you very much for participating in this debate. Thanks very much to our audience for being here and to our panelists. And thank you for watching. Of course, we'll be back here again tomorrow night when we have the Granite State debate, night number 2. U.S. Senate candidates will be on stage. But for now, have a great night.